Welcome to the first Forage online event. This is your host, Benji Sklar, and I'm really excited to have Andrew Sennett and Derek Steuben on the show. A little bit of background on Andrew and Derek. I'll start with Andrew. Andrew works for a company called Z-Tech, which is a investing branch of AB InBev. He went to Vanderbilt, Chicago for his MBA, and now he's based in New York. And a little bit on Derek. Derek is from New Jersey. He went to Harvard undergrad, Cornell Law School, and now works at a law firm in the city working in the startup space. So I'm really excited to have both of you on the show today. I'd like to just start with, how is the coronavirus impacting your job? How is it changing what you're up to and your outlook for the year ahead?
Yeah. Derek, do you want me to go first here?
Go ahead.
Sure. Well, first of all, Benji, thanks for having us. It's great to be on and be connecting during all this coronavirus kind of craziness. To your point, how's coronavirus affecting us? It's affecting us a lot. So a surprising amount. At the very, very high level, as you mentioned, I work for Z-Tech, which is one of the corporate venture arms of Anheuser-Busch InBev, and ABI's stock, this is no secret, has been hurt a lot by all of this because nobody is out buying beer, right? Anywhere in the world. Nobody's going to bars, nobody's going to sporting events, nobody's gathering. So even, back since January, it really started in China, all the way now through March here and into April into the US, we've just seen big markets really be affected by beer sales, which affects our parent company. Now, how it gets down to us is, I think corporate venture firms are one of the areas where big corporations can look to scale back pretty easily because it's not part of their core business. And so as we look to deploy capital this year, I think we'll do about half as much as we were planning even just a month ago. And then in the really granular level, our portfolio companies are affected as well. We invest in fintech and marketplace technology, all B2B businesses, specifically with small and medium-sized points of consumption. So that's bars, restaurants, corner stores, whatever that would sell traditional ABI products, as well as anything else. And all of them are closed, essentially. And so we're seeing it hit on a bunch of different levels. But I won't monopolize all the time right now, but there also is a silver lining. We've been really creative about how we're coming up with some unique opportunities that we're seeing out of this as well, which I'm happy to dive into later. But I'll let the other guys go and talk a little bit about how Corona is affecting initially.
Got it. Yeah, I want to introduce Lou Kerner. Hey, Lou.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah, a little bit of background on Lou. Lou is currently an investor with Crypto Oracle, which is a VC that invests specifically in crypto, and he's also an advisor for multiple companies. And his background, he went to UCLA, he got his MBA at Stanford. I used to work for Lou, so really excited to have you on the show, Lou.
This is great to be here, Ben.
And then I see my sister, Rachel. What's going on, Rachel Sklar?
Can you hear me?
Yep. What's going on?
Oh. Who else is on the call? Just your panelists?
Yep, just the panelists.
Okay.
And 100 other viewers that we can't see yet.
Really?
No.
Oh.
Future viewers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
They'll come in time.
I will participate in your panel.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%.
I'm actually on another Zoom call, but I'm
Nice.
pretending to support you.
Yeah, you're amazing. So I want to ask Derek, how is the coronavirus impacting your business as a lawyer?
Sure. First off, thank you, Benji, for having us, for hosting this. It's a great idea. You know that both myself and my firm are big supporters of Forage Group and everything that you're doing, Benji.
Thank you.
To answer your question, generally, I think it depends on the sector. You know, as an attorney, I work on, particularly an attorney in the startup and venture capital space, I work on a number of deals involving a number of different industries. And so, you know, from a high level, some examples, deals that involved live entertainment spaces that, you know, were close to fruition are sort of on indefinite pause, given the fact that no one's sure when live entertainment and events can happen again in some of the major, you know, cities across the US and even the world. Other deals, particularly some involving kind of healthcare services, are full on ahead, because I think given everything that's happening, people are actually pretty focused on the value that healthcare providers can bring, and different kind of new paths for growth that they can find. And because my practice involves startups themselves and companies, who Andrew referred to as portfolio companies of his venture wing, as well as the investor side for VCs, I see right now a fair amount of what it sounds like Andrew described at the portfolio company level, where there are startup companies, some that have financing recently, some that maybe didn't have much cash recently, but basically across the board, all portfolio companies that I come across, whether I advise them directly or I'm involved with a VC or other investor that is involved in them, they're all kind of reassessing their cash flow models. And in particular, on my end, they're taking a look at those new SBA loans that were passed in the CARES Act last week. And people are trying to generally look for advice about what their options are to manage what could be a 3 to 6 month cash flow hit for a lot of companies. And so my practice has moved from primarily just moving deals along and helping companies get set up, which was a pretty active startup and venture market prior to this coronavirus piece, to being more a mix of kind of general guidance to those portfolio companies and startups I represent, and still deal flow in certain sectors where people want to move on ahead.
Nice. I have a lot of questions, but I'll hand it off to Lou to answer. How do you think the crypto markets are being impacted with what's going on?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is obviously the crypto markets to some degree were built for this. We believe that to some degree the systems are broken, potentially irreparably broken, and we're seeing that now. The coronavirus has just accelerated, I think, a lot of the things that people like me in crypto see as inevitable. We're printing basically an infinite amount of money, and that works until it doesn't work. What's interesting so far is that the markets have actually been quite correlated with traditional markets. So you would think, similar to gold, that we would be a safe haven. But what happens now during a period of illiquidity, people are getting liquidity from wherever they can. And so, we're going to see in the coming months if, in fact, there is a decoupling, and if, in fact, crypto starts to perform how people like myself believes it's going to perform during times like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I'll get back to you, but I'll let Rachel speak. How is working for a large nonprofit being changed because of what's going on, especially you're in the financing fundraising branch? She works for AJC.
Yeah, I work for the American Jewish Committee. It's the largest Jewish nonprofit in the world. I mean, it's not the largest, but it's one of the oldest and it's one of the most established. And they are basically going to lose 75% of their income for next year. But anti-Semitism is on the rise, so they have a lot to work with.
All right.
I'm learning all about the deep web and Reddit these days.
Nice.
And
I really like the diversity of the speakers here. All of you come from really different backgrounds. I'm curious, how do you think online events can play a role in your business? If everyone stays at home and social distancing, how can we continue to operate and generate business and leads and sales from our couch? Like what kind of events would you be interested in attending? And what would be the structure, the itinerary of these events?
So, I'll start off only because, as you know, my company holds a lot of different events we traditionally did.
I'll say something. Yeah, Lou hosts maybe the most amount of meetups around the world with his company called Crypto. They're called Crypto Mondays. And when I worked for Lou, they had events happening every Monday, literally in like 50 major cities around the world. So
we've had events in 57 cities around the world. We're actually very decentralized. So we run the event here in New York, which we do every week. And then other hosts run their events in their cities. And what we've done, a number of the meetups have moved to Zoom, like we're on Zoom now. And I think it's definitely functional. I think the most fun has been what we've done here in New York is instead of being on Zoom, we've actually moved it to virtual reality.
Whoa.
And you think about, being with somebody in real life versus being with somebody on Zoom. VR is kind of in the middle of that. It's not obviously being there in real life, but there is, yep.
How do you do that?
How
does it work?
Well, first, it helps to actually have a VR headset. They're sold out a lot now. I actually just got my first headset about a month ago when it became apparent that we were going to get quarantined and be living like this, and that it's really VR's time. And once you have a headset, we use software from a company called AltSpace VR. And you just launch the AltSpace VR, and you'll see different events that are going on, and we're with the events. I'm sorry?
How expensive is that? Like how much?
The most popular rigs are made by Oculus, which is owned by Facebook, and they sell two models today: the Oculus Go, the low-end model's 200, and the high-end model's 500. And the 200 model's great. If you want to participate in one of these meetups for $200, it's a lot of fun, and it feels a lot more like real life. And so for somebody who's cooped up all day, like I assume most of us are, with very little interaction with other human beings, except maybe those in our own space, to be able to go to this virtual world and interact with dozens of other people is a breath of fresh air.
Can you explain what it's like in the VR room? What is it? What's going on?
Sure. And you can go and you can see on my Medium post, if you go to Medium and search Lou Kerner, I've written about VR posts, and we actually, you can see them videotaped. So you can actually see what's going on in the room, and we actually replicate what a Crypto Mondays is like. We have a featured speaker. And we're actually up on a stage, and the people who aren't speaking are off the stage and kind of watching us. Everybody else is generally muted while we're doing the kind of fireside chat. After about 20 minutes, we open it up to questions from the audience for about 10 minutes, and then for the rest of it's an hour and a half. Then it's just people mingling. So sometimes there are 10 people sitting around listening to somebody talk, or you can go off and hold one-on-one conversations in different areas of the space. The guy, we're working with a company called Bits and Angels, and he's built out the space. It actually looks like a lot like Tron, if you're familiar with Tron.
Yeah. Well, that sounds incredible. I need to buy an Oculus headset and figure out how to launch VR online events, because that's my whole thing right now.
It's the future. I mean, the good news is it's it really is. It's so immersive. The bad news is obviously a small percentage of the population has them today, but you can actually access it via a PC. It's pretty easy. Via a Mac, it's a little wonkier.
Got it. Andrew, Derek, do you think that you could generate business and continue operating through the VR world? Or what are your thoughts on online events?
So for us, we are not a company that necessarily hosts a ton of events to begin with. So transitioning them to VR wouldn't necessarily be a priority for us. I think there's two things that's interesting there. One is just, as Lou was saying, how it's, you were very wise that a month ago you saw this coming and went and bought one. I think you're seeing that just people are planning for the future in very interesting ways, right? I think generally speaking, we'll come out of this and people will be a little bit maybe smarter about savings. People will probably shift to how often they're working from home now that we're seeing that people can do it to some degree. I think you're going to see businesses like a VR or the Peloton bikes that enable people to stay connected, stay exercising. If this were to happen again, people see the customer value proposition in a whole new light for those specific products. So that's not really specific to us and our business and our industry and how we would use VR. But I think that as Lou was saying, there's a ton of growth opportunity for a number of different things. The only thing I'll add is that we don't do this at ZTech, but again, I'm speaking a lot about our parent company, Anheuser-Busch InBev. We have still sponsored online events. So for instance, this Friday, Axios is hosting a big live event, and we're the sponsor of it. So we're shifting some of our traditional ad dollars, I think, whereas normally you would see them, encouraging you on TV to go and go to a bar and have a Corona or meet up with friends and have a Budweiser or whatever. That's obviously not relevant right now. And so instead, we're sponsoring some of these online events. And so, people are being creative and trying to find the silver lining in where there's still opportunity.
That's interesting. I wonder how that will actually play out. What does it mean to sponsor an online event? Like, I could wear a T-shirt that says ZTech. Like, I could have it in the background, like somewhere on the screen.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, and by coincidence, I'm actually quarantined right now with a friend who works for the New York Times live events, and she is probably busier than any of us that I'm kind of quarantined with, our small group. And it's because all of her events were in person for the year. The New York Times puts these on, and now they're trying to shift them all to online. And I've talked with her a little bit about it. And much like we're doing, we being Anheuser-Busch InBev for this event on Friday, she is trying to do as well, where sometimes it's literally just having your logo in the bottom. It seems very passive. I would guess that there's probably more than that. I am not a marketing advertising person, so I don't know really the ROI on all of that, but I do think, there's a reason why you put logos on the outfield of sporting, of the outfield of a baseball field or whatever. I think just seeing that name still is valuable. I think, advertising 101 would probably tell you that. I'm not the right person to ask, but I think that can be a piece of it. I don't think that they're trying to steer the conversation towards your product. Like, it's not that just because you're sponsoring it, now we're going to weave in, and try to direct the conversation one way or another. I think it's more passive, quite frankly, but it's being a good corporate citizen and still making sure that you're sponsoring things and, still just having your name out there as much as possible.
Yeah. I wonder what kind of brand equity and expected attendee list to have AB InBev or another Fortune 500 sponsor your online event. I bet it has to be pretty
Yeah,
significant.
I'm sure that they figure out, where the different markets are. They're very good about that. Figuring out who's this type of buyer or whatever. And I mean, we all see it on Instagram, right? They can target down really, really in particular to exactly what you're looking for. So I'm sure that they're picking the events as need be and having different brands be involved with them. But again, that's not really what I'm involved with. So I'm kind of guessing, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, that was great. What about you, Derek? As a lawyer, targeting early stage companies, startups, how can you go about leveraging online events to get new business as a law firm?
So I think the business of being a law firm is a little different than a traditional company. I would say that the economy as a whole, I view all of these conversations and what's happening with coronavirus regarding VR and kind of online Zoom alternatives to live events, as really coronavirus is acting as an accelerant, where there were prior VR solutions that had been under development, or you might have been invited to a live event where they also had links where people from around the world could follow the speakers. And I think what coronavirus and kind of the world we're in now is really doing is accelerating all of that. It's forcing a lot of companies to think about whether that's going to be their exclusive solution. And I think then actually correspondingly make them think, what's the value of the live event? Do we actually benefit from going wholly VR or online because we cut down on our kind of built-in cost of dealing with the live physical space? And I think depending on the business you're going to fall that you're dealing with, you're going to fall somewhere in a spectrum, right? Like a Chipotle, for example, where their business is primarily selling burritos to you. That's a business that needs a live event element, and not an organized event, but like you can't cut out the person-to-person contact. A law firm, for example, I think tends to fall on the other side of the spectrum with a lot of other companies where there is nothing inherently person-to-person that must be done person-to-person. And so a law firm like my own, which we actually just moved offices, partially because there's this wonderful patio space where we are overlooking Bryant Park at 42nd and 5th Avenue in our new space where we can host client events. Some of those events, my law firm might be forced to hold some of those events, virtually, online. I think, as I mentioned, for a law firm, you could engage me, you could hear about my background, we could have an introductory call without ever meeting in person. You could give me work, we could close a deal for you without ever meeting in person. But law firms are interesting because I think the value of those events that we might hold for general investors and founders interested in networking in the startup world is actually the in-person meeting.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting a chance to shake hands with a guy who you want to represent you. So I think we, as a law firm, the business of a law firm, we're in sort of that in-between space where I think, time will tell how much benefit there is for us as a business to continue to hold in-person events versus virtual events. But certainly I think some companies are going to really move in the virtual direction because depending on what you're selling, the value of that in-person handshake goes down a lot.
Yeah. Guys, I see we have 8 seconds left with the 40-minute freemium Zoom account, so I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you so much, and I'll be posting this. Oh, we're over 40 seconds, so I guess I don't know why, but thank you very much. I want to continue this, but I'm going to cut it off here to keep it short and sweet. And so I really appreciate the time, and don't forget that you were the first online event hosted by Forage, so many more to go, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
That's
everyone.
great. Thank you so much.
Good luck, guys. Stay healthy.